It was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. I am a seasoned sailor from the southern part of Texas and had always dreamt of exploring the vast expanse of the Pacific Ocean. With my trusty sailboat and my crew consisting of 3 close friends, we set sail from San Diego, eager for our adventure. For the first week, everything went smoothly. We encountered playful dolphins, marveled at the endless horizon, and enjoyed the tranquil beauty of the open sea. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie red glow across the water, we anchored near a small, uncharted island. The plan was to rest for the night and continue our journey in the morning. I took the first watch, enjoying the peaceful solitude under a canopy of stars. As midnight approached, I noticed something unusual in the water. At first, I thought it was a school of fish shimmering under the moonlight, but as the seconds passed, I realized it was something else entirely. A faint, melodic singing reached my ears, so beautiful and haunting at the same time that it sent chills down my spine. Intrigued, I leaned over the side of the boat, trying to get a better look. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the depths. At first glance, it looked like a woman with long, flowing hair and pale skin that glowed in the moonlight. But as she drew closer, my fascination turned to horror. Her eyes were pitch black, devoid of any warmth or humanity, and her smile revealed sharp, jagged teeth. Her lower body, now visible, was not that of a human, but of a monstrous fish, covered in dark, slimy scales. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The creature sang louder, and I felt an inexplicable urge to dive into the water and join her. As I leaned further over the edge, one of my friends, who had come to relieve me from my watch, grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" shouting at me, shaking me out of the trance. I snapped back to reality, stumbling back onto the deck. "There's something in the water," I stammered, pointing towards the eerie figure. My friend's eyes widened in terror as he saw the creature. The mermaid's song turned into a piercing screech, and she lunged at the boat, her claws scraping against the hull. The whole boat rocked violently, waking the rest of the crew. They scrambled on deck, eyes wide with fear. Me and my friend tried to explain what was going on to the rest of the crew, but there was no need. The creature's malevolent presence was undeniable. It began circling the boat, its black eyes never leaving the crew. "We need to get out of here," one of them shouted. I sprang into action, starting the engine. The boat roared to life, and we sped away from the island, but the mermaid pursued us relentlessly. The boat's speed was our only advantage, but the creature was unnaturally fast, keeping pace effortlessly. As we pushed the engine to its limits, the boat began to falter. The mermaid let out another screech, this one filled with rage. She leapt out of the water, landing on the deck with a sickening thud. Panic ensued as we tried to fend her off, using anything we could find. I grabbed a flare gun and fired it at the creature. The bright light and heat seemed to momentarily confuse her, giving them a brief respite. "Get the net!" I shouted to the crew, who quickly retrieved a fishing net from the storage compartment. We managed to entangle the mermaid, but she thrashed violently, nearly capsizing the boat. With great effort, we threw her back into the water, her screeches echoing into the night as she disappeared beneath the waves. Breathing heavily, we checked each other for injuries. Apart from a few scratches and bruises, we were all miraculously unharmed. I steered the boat back on course, determined to put as much distance as possible between us and the island. As dawn broke, we sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had happened. We vowed never to speak of the encounter again, fearing no one would believe us anyway. But the terror of that night stayed with us forever, a haunting reminder of the dark, unknown depths of the ocean. The sea has always been a second home to me. As a fisherman in the southern part of Texas, I've spent countless nights navigating its waters, feeling the salt on my skin and the rhythm of the waves beneath my boat. But one night, under a moonless sky, the sea revealed a horror I could never have imagined. It was an unusually calm night. The sky was an endless expanse of darkness, and the stars were obscured by thick, heavy clouds. I was out alone, about 5 miles from shore, with only the dim glow of my boat's lantern to pierce the blackness around me. The engine hummed softly, the only sound in an otherwise eerily silent night. I was just about to cast my net when I heard it, a soft, melodic singing that seemed to float on the air. It was hauntingly beautiful, yet it sent chills down my spine. I stood still, straining to hear more, thinking maybe it was my mind playing tricks on me. But the singing grew louder, more insistent, wrapping around me like a siren's call. I looked over the side of my boat, peering into the inky water. For a moment I saw nothing but darkness. Then a shape began to emerge just beneath the surface. My heart pounded as I leaned closer, trying to make out what it was. And then I saw her. Her face was pale, almost luminescent in the lantern's glow. Long, dark hair floated around her like a halo, and her eyes... God, her eyes were the deepest, coldest blue I had ever seen. They seemed to pierce right through me, holding me in place. Her lips moved in time with the singing, which now seemed to vibrate within my very bones. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. The beauty of her face was mesmerizing, but there was something horribly wrong, something sinister about her. Her gaze locked onto mine, and in that instant, I knew she wasn't human. Her mouth curled into a predatory smile, revealing sharp, needle-like teeth. My boat rocked slightly, and I felt a tug on the net. I looked down to see her hands, webbed and clawed, gripping the side of the boat. Panic surged through me. I yanked the net back, trying to break free, but her grip was like iron. The singing grew louder, more frantic, and I realized with dawning horror that she was pulling me towards the water. "No!" I screamed, fighting against the pull with all my strength. But it was like struggling against the tide itself. She was incredibly strong, and for a terrifying moment I felt myself being dragged towards the edge of the boat, closer to those cold, unfeeling eyes. In a desperate bid, I reached for the boat's flare gun. My hands shook as I fumbled with it, trying to aim. With a prayer on my lips, I fired. The flare shot out, lighting up the night with a blinding, fiery glow. For a split second, I saw her, fully illuminated. The sleek, scaled body, the gills flaring on her neck, and those terrible, hungry eyes. The flare struck the water and she recoiled, letting out a shriek that tore through the night. Her grip loosened and I seized the moment, scrambling to the controls and gunning the engine. The boat lurched forward, tearing away from her grasp. I glanced back to see her disappearing beneath the waves, her eyes still locked onto me with a promise of vengeance. I didn't stop until I reached the shore, my heart racing and my hands trembling. I stumbled onto the beach, falling to my knees and gasping for breath. The sea, once my friend and confidant, now seemed like a dark, endless expanse of terror. To this day, I can still hear her song in my nightmares, and I know that the sea holds many secrets, some of which are better left undisturbed. The waters off the coast of Puerto Rico had always been a haven of tranquility for me, a place where I felt more alive, more at peace. That day, the sun hung high in the azure sky, casting a warm golden glow over the crystalline waves. I had decided to take my small boat out for a solo adventure, craving the solace that only the open sea could provide. I anchored near a secluded cove, the kind you only find in postcards, with its pristine sands and whispering palm trees. After diving into the refreshing embrace of the ocean, I spent hours snorkeling, marveling at the vibrant marine life that danced below me. Time slipped away, as it tends to do when you're lost in nature's beauty. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the water, I noticed a strange figure swimming in the distance. At first, I thought it was a large fish, or perhaps a playful dolphin. Curiosity piqued. I swam closer, wanting a better look, but the closer I got, the more I realized something was off. The creature's movements were too deliberate, too human. My heart pounded in my chest as I saw it fully for the first time. It had the upper body of a woman, with long, flowing hair that seemed to shimmer even in the fading light. But where her legs should have been, there was a sleek, powerful tail, glistening with scales that caught the last rays of the sun. Her eyes were dark and haunting, filled with an unnatural intelligence that sent chills down my spine. I tried to tell myself it was a hallucination, a trick of the light, but the fear that gripped me was all too real. She watched me with an eerie calmness, her lips curving into a smile that was anything but friendly. Panic surged through me, and I began to swim back to my boat, the water suddenly feeling like a leaden weight around my limbs. Just as I reached the boat, I felt something brush against my leg. I kicked out instinctively, desperate to get away, but she was faster. Her hand, cold and clammy, grabbed my ankle, pulling me under. The world above turned into a distorted blur as I struggled, my lungs burning for air. I remembered my knife, strapped to my thigh for just such an emergency. With shaking hands, I fumbled for it, every second feeling like an eternity. Her grip tightened, and I could see her face inches from mine, those dark eyes boring into my soul. With a surge of adrenaline, I slashed at her arm. She let out a piercing, otherworldly scream, releasing me instantly. I burst to the surface, gasping for air, and hauled myself into the boat with every ounce of strength I had left. My hands trembled uncontrollably as I started the engine, my eyes never leaving the spot where she had disappeared. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting an ominous twilight over the sea. As I sped back to the shore, the boat bouncing over the waves, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see her trailing behind. But the waters remained deceptively calm, hiding whatever horrors lurked beneath. When I finally reached the shore, I collapsed onto the sand, my body shaking with exhaustion and fear. I could still feel her icy grip on my ankle, a grim reminder of how close I had come to death. The locals later told me stories of the Serena, the mermaid that lured sailors to their doom, but nothing could have prepared me for the reality of seeing her with my own eyes. I never returned to that cove, and even now, years later, the memory of that day haunts my dreams. The sea, once my refuge, had become a place of nightmares, and I could never forget the terror I felt in the gaze of the mermaid of Puerto Rico. I had rented a small sailboat for a week to escape the constant demands of work and the suffocating city life. The plan was to sail along the coast, find secluded spots, and just enjoy the serenity of the open sea. I had no idea that this trip would turn into the most terrifying experience of my life. The first few days were perfect. The weather was mild, the sea calm, and I was starting to feel the stress melt away. I anchored in a small, deserted cove one evening, the sun casting a golden glow over the water as it set. I could hear the gentle lapping of waves against the hull, and for the first time in months, I felt at peace. As night fell, I decided to take a swim. The water was warm and inviting, and the moonlight gave it an ethereal glow. I dove in, relishing the cool embrace of the ocean. I floated on my back, staring up at the stars, feeling a sense of tranquility I hadn't felt in years. But then, something changed. The water around me grew colder, and I felt a strange current tugging at me. I brushed it off as my imagination and continued to float, trying to regain that sense of calm. Suddenly, I heard a soft, melodic humming. It was beautiful, yet eerie, echoing across the water. I turned to see where it was coming from, and that's when I saw her. At first, she looked like a beautiful woman, her long hair flowing around her in the water. But as she drew closer, I realized something was horribly wrong. Her skin had a bluish tint, her eyes were large and dark, and her mouth was filled with sharp, jagged teeth. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her swim closer, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. I tried to swim back to the boat, but the current was stronger now, pulling me towards her. Her humming grew louder, almost hypnotic, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I knew I had to get away, but my body wouldn't respond. It was as if I was paralyzed by fear. She was only a few feet away now, her hand reaching out towards me. Her touch was ice cold, sending a jolt of terror through my body. I screamed, thrashing wildly in the water, desperate to break free. Her grip tightened, pulling me under the surface. The water was dark and murky, and I could barely see her face, but I could feel her eyes on me, watching, waiting. I kicked and fought with everything I had, my lungs burning for air. Somehow I managed to break free from her grip and shot towards the surface, gasping for breath as I broke through the water. I swam frantically towards the boat, my heart racing, the fear driving me forward. As I scrambled onto the deck, I glanced back at the water. She was still there, watching me with those dark, soulless eyes, her humming now a low, guttural growl. I knew I had to get out of there. I started the boat's engine, my hands shaking, and steered away from the cove as fast as I could. I didn't stop until I was miles away, the sun beginning to rise on the horizon. Only then did I let myself collapse on the deck, my body trembling with exhaustion and fear. I stared out at the water, half expecting to see her following me. But there was nothing, just the endless expanse of the sea. I didn't sail back to that cove or anywhere near it for the rest of the trip. I cut my vacation short and returned to the safety of the shore, my mind haunted by the memory of those dark, watching eyes and the cold touch of her hand. To this day, I can't explain what I saw, but I know one thing for certain. There are things in the depths of the ocean that are better left undiscovered. It was supposed to be a dream vacation. A small group of us had chartered a boat off the coast of West Africa, eager to dive into the warm waters and explore the vibrant marine life the region is known for. The days were filled with snorkeling, sunbathing, and the occasional fishing trip. It was the perfect escape from the mundane, or so we thought. One evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I decided to take one last swim. The rest of the group was relaxing on the deck, enjoying drinks and laughter. I slipped into the water, the cool embrace of the ocean immediately refreshing against the humid air. I swam out a bit, enjoying the solitude. The water was unusually calm. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of the waves against the boat and the distant calls of seabirds. As I floated on my back, staring up at the sky, a strange feeling washed over me. It was as if the ocean had gone completely silent. The air felt thick, heavy with an unexplainable tension. I glanced back towards the boat, which now seemed farther away than I remembered. That's when I saw it. Just below the surface, maybe 20 feet away, was a figure. At first, I thought it was one of my friends, but the silhouette was all wrong. It was too slender, too smooth, and its movements were unlike any swimmer I'd ever seen. Curiosity overrode my initial unease. I dipped my head beneath the water, peering into the depths. There, illuminated by the fading light, was a face, but not a human face. Its eyes were larger than normal, too wide, too black, reflecting an intelligence that sent shivers down my spine, and its mouth, it was fixed in a haunting, toothy grin. My heart pounded as I realized what I was seeing. This wasn't some figment of my imagination. It was a mermaid, but not the kind from fairy tales. There was something sinister in its gaze, a predatory hunger that sent a jolt of fear through me. I kicked hard, propelling myself towards the boat, but the creature moved faster. I felt a sharp tug on my leg, pulling me under. Panic surged through me as I fought against its grip. My lungs burned, desperate for air. I kicked wildly, connecting with something solid. The grip loosened, and I shot to the surface, gasping for breath. I screamed for help, waving frantically towards the boat. The deckhands saw me, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror as they spotted the creature behind me. They threw a life ring, and I swam with every ounce of strength I had left, reaching it just as the mermaid lunged again. Its fingers grazed my ankle, sending a chill up my spine. The crew pulled me aboard, and I collapsed on the deck, trembling and gasping for air. I looked back at the water, expecting to see it still lurking. But the surface was calm, the creature gone as if it had never been there. That night, we cut our trip short, heading back to shore as quickly as possible. I never spoke of the encounter again, not wanting to relive the terror. But the memory lingers, a constant reminder of the dark, mysterious things that lurk beneath the waves. And I know, deep down, that I narrowly escaped a fate far worse than death.